Hey guys, tonight we set sail on the high seas, not to chase treasure or dodge cannonballs, but to explore something far more domestic. You're aboard an 18th century pirate ship now, wind in your face, salt cake to your lips, and yes, an unruly beard that refuses to behave. The deck creaks beneath your bare feet as you step over a snoring sailor, whose impressive goatee looks like it wrestled a sea cucumber and lost. Someone off to your left just sneezed into a bucket. Charming. You're not here for glory. You're here to understand how, in a world without plumbing, mirrors, or even a decent comb, these crusty sea wolves managed to keep their beards neatly trimmed. Well, neatly-ish. And spoiler alert, you probably wouldn't survive this voyage. Between the spoiled rations, the rope burns, and the unsolicited lice, you'd be pining for your electric trimmer within hours. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and what time it is where you're tuning in from. Always fun to see where the sleepy fleet is drifting tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across the deck, salt-soaked boards tapping rhythmically beneath your boots. Morning sun hits the rigging like a slow explosion of gold dust. You can smell yesterday's stew, still clinging to the air like a haunting. And somewhere above, a gull screams at you like it knows you skipped bathing, again. Beard care isn't exactly glamorous at sea, but it matters. Not just for vanity, though pirates could be oddly vain, but for morale. You stroke your chin thoughtfully. A little wiry. A little moist. A little suspiciously sticky. Could be old soup. Could be worse. Back in port, beard grooming was an art. Complete with fragrant oils and clattering barber shops. But now you're 3 weeks deep into a voyage with no fresh water, no soap, and only one razor shared between 23 men and a goat named Reuben. Guess who gets to use it last? Still, you persist. After all, a tidy beard is a kind of hope. A declaration that you haven't yet succumbed to total chaos. A defiant snip in the face of maritime entropy. Around you, the crew emerges. Sunburnt and wild-eyed. Most of them look like they trimmed their beards by sticking their faces into a blender. Others have gone full forest nymph, their facial hair tangled with breadcrumbs, salt crust, and something suspiciously pink that might once have been shrimp. And yet, amidst the scruff, there's a culture. A kind of pride. Facial hair on this ship is more than personal preference, it's an emblem. Some go for the tight jawline, using bits of flint to scrape edges clean. Others cultivate flowing whiskers that flap heroically in the wind, occasionally catching spare raisins during storms. One old-handed Jacques, a wiry Frenchman with a laugh like a ship's hinge, swears by rubbing his beard with rum each morning. Keeps the lice tipsy, he claims. You're not sure if that's how parasites work, but you can't argue with the shine. His beard glistens like lacquered mahogany. You try to follow suit. Scoop up a little seawater, dab it on your cheeks, and take a moment to massage your beard thoughtfully, like you're a scholar pondering existential dread. In reality, you're trying to get the dried fish scales out before someone mistakes your chin for bait. Historians still argue whether pirates actually cared this much about grooming. Some insist it was pure necessity. Fewer tangles mean fewer infestations. Others believe it was about hierarchy. The first mates always looked a bit cleaner, their mustaches curling just so. The captain? Impeccable. Even Blackbeard reportedly braided gunpowder fuses into his beard, not exactly a spa day, but certainly intentional. And then there's you. Standing there with your pocket knife, trying to figure out how to shape your beard without removing a chunk of ear. You recall that one time Cookie tried to trim his with a cutlass. Lost a bit of lip. Gained a reputation. Tools are precious. So is time. There's no grooming hour carved into the ship's daily rhythm. You do what you can between hauling ropes, dodging rats, and wondering if that thump below deck is Reuben or something worse. And yet, somehow, there's peace in this ritual. The quiet scrape of metal against hair. The soft tug as you coax a shape into the chaos. You don't need perfection. Just a little order. A sign that even out here, where the horizon never ends and your bed is a splintered board beside a leaking barrel, you're still you. Above, the sun climbs higher. Below, the sea sloshes like a sleeping giant. Around you, the crew grunts and murmurs and scratches. You smile. Your beard? Not bad. Not great. But not bad. And out here, not bad is a kind of luxury. The sun's higher now, and so is the stench. You've been aboard long enough to notice it doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps. It builds. It weaves itself into the sails, clings to your cuffs, and eventually settles right beneath your nose like an uninvited passenger with questionable bathing habits. And at the center of it all? The beard. Yes, yours. You scratch at it absent-mindedly, then immediately regret doing so. What was once a light, wiry scruff now feels damp. The kind of damp you don't trust. The kind that suggests something small and probably legged may have recently passed through. It's part salt, part sweat, part whatever that was you face-planted into during yesterday's squall. Beards at sea aren't just tangled messes. They're repositories. Every meal, every errant splash of grog, every passing wave of seawater blown across the bow, your beard remembers. It's like a little personal logbook, but instead of ink, it uses grease and barnacle dust. There's a myth that salt water naturally cleanses the skin. Sure, it can help. But when it comes to beard hygiene, salt water's more of a prankster than a purifier. It dries your skin out, leaving it flaky, tight, and itchy enough to make you consider headbutting the mast. And if you're one of the unfortunate types with curly facial hair? Congratulations, you've now got seaweed spaghetti glued to your face. Pirates didn't exactly have beauty routines, but there were habits, patterns, rituals cobbled together from necessity, boredom, and sheer desperation. You watch one of the older sailors, Toothless Dan, though he's got at least 4 teeth left. Thank you very much. Dip a length of linen into a bucket of brine, then wrap it around his chin. He calls it a beard compress, though it looks more like beard torture. Keeps the skin from blistering, he says through a suspicious cough. No one's quite sure if he's right, but he seems to enjoy it. Others go the scrub and pray route, rubbing their beards with stale ship biscuit, which, when crumbled fine enough, acts as a kind of gritty exfoliant. Historians still argue whether this was standard practice or just what happens when you mistake your beard for your breakfast. Then there's always the crew favorite, the seagull splash. You lean over the rail, dunk your face in a bucket or straight into the ocean if you're feeling bold, and hope the cold slap of nature's bath will bring both clarity and cleanliness. Spoiler: it brings neither. But it does wake you up. Of course, no conversation about sea beard funk would be complete without the topic of vermin. Fleas, yes. Lice, oh yes. But also, beard crabs. Not a joke. Tiny stowaways that think your chin is a 5-star inn. It's why some pirates tied strings around their beards at night, or even braided them tight to the chin like little face-hugging ropes to keep creatures from moving in. You've heard of one poor soul who shaved half his face in desperation midstorm. The wind caught the razor, and, well, no one calls him Lefty because of his hand. Even Blackbeard himself reportedly used sulfur and tar near his beard to smoke out pests. According to some, the man would even light slow-burning fuses woven into his whiskers. The flames danced in the night wind during battle, making him look like an infernal banshee, part warrior, part campfire. Historians still debate whether this was real or just exaggerated legend, but you're pretty sure a guy named Blackbeard wasn't big on subtlety. You glance around the deck and wonder what you'd look like with a few lit fuses tangled into your chin. Then you remember you once tripped over a lantern just walking to the privy, so probably best not to dabble with flame. A few crewmates opt for simple beard rinses during squalls, letting rainwater cascade down their face while they stand dramatically at the helm, pretending they're the star of a sea opera. You tried that once. You slipped. The memory still haunts your hip bone. Some say the best treatment is patience. The longer your beard exists at sea, the more it adapts. It hardens, thickens, learns the ways of the brine. Like a crustacean, it forms its own armor. After month 4, you stop fighting it. You become one with the beard. Still, on day 38, when your chin itches like Poseidon's using it as a dartboard, you wonder if all this fuzz is really worth it. There's always the nuclear option, shaving. A full clean shave is rare, but not unheard of. You've seen it happen. Usually after heartbreak, or betrayal, or a particularly soul-crushing stew. But it's risky. No mirrors, no hot water, and the ship sways like a drunken walrus on stilts. The last guy who tried to cut his chin so badly he spent a week with a compress soaked in squid ink, because, and you quote, "that's all we had." So here you are. Not quite clean. Not quite crusty. Straddling the line between order and oblivion. Salt, sweat, and beard funk swirling together in the balmy Caribbean air. You close your eyes. Listen to the creak of the ship. Feel the rough grain of the deck beneath your knees as you kneel beside a barrel to rinse what dignity you can from your face. Your beard might not be trim, but it's yours. And in the great floating mess that is pirate life, that's something. You're hunched over a crate, fiddling with something sharp. It's not exactly a razor, more like a stubbornly curved clamshell that's been sharpened on a bit of coral and then dropped twice. Your goal? Shape your beard without slicing open your jugular. Pirates weren't known for their grooming kits. No gilded scissors or dainty brushes here. What they had, if they had anything at all, was usually looted, improvised, or made from nature's more questionable offerings. You peer into the edge of a dented pewter plate, angling it toward the morning sun. It's not a mirror. Not really. But it's the closest thing on board, short of staring into the oily surface of the stew pot, and you're still traumatized from that last encounter. No one wants to see their own face while chewing on squid. Your makeshift blade glints in the light, and you hesitate. A man once trimmed too aggressively while the ship lurched mid-sentence. Now he sports a stylish nick across his jaw, one of those conversation scars. Looks rugged, sure. But it also leaks rum if he drinks too quickly. Sharp clamshells were surprisingly common in a pirate's toolkit, especially among Caribbean crews where shellfish were plentiful and, more importantly, free. Sharpened carefully, they made for delicate shaving tools, though delicate is generous. They could also shatter mid-stroke, peppering your beard with sea glass confetti. You've tried using one before. The result? Your beard looked like it had been in a fight with a crab and lost. A few wealthier pirates, or those lucky enough to raid ships with actual barbers, had proper blades. Straight razors, sometimes with ornately carved handles. Ivory, bone, even mother of pearl if the original owner was fancy enough to cry about it. You once saw a Spanish captain's grooming kit, complete with a silver comb and a monogrammed mustache wax tin. Took 3 pirates to wrestle it from him. One of them now wears the tin as a necklace. Then there's the shark tooth. You eye the specimen hanging from a nearby beam, polished smooth, still stained slightly pink. Supposedly it once belonged to a diver who could shave with it and crack open a conch in one swift motion. Impressive, if mildly terrifying. You tried it once. Just once. It ended with you apologizing to your own cheek. Historians still argue whether pirates genuinely used such exotic tools for grooming or if it's one of those myths, like sea monsters or polite cabin boys. But records from shipwrecks and recovered artifacts suggest a surprising number of multi-use blades existed. One edge for trimming meat, another for trimming mustaches. Talk about dual-purpose living. Of course, these tools required maintenance. You couldn't just wave a razor around and hope for the best. It needed to be cleaned, oiled, and protected from rust, and if you think pirates were disciplined enough for that, you've never watched a man try to floss with sail thread. So what did they use for sharpening? You guessed it. Rocks. Flat stones, coral shards, bits of slate stolen from collapsed chimneys. Some swore by rubbing their blade against the inner hull of the ship. Others carried pocket-sized whetstones, which they mostly forgot about until it was too late. One man you know, Big Reggie, insisted on using the sight of a cannon. It worked surprisingly well until the cannon fired mid-stroke. He still twitches when someone lights a pipe. Then there's you. Crouched like a deranged raccoon behind a barrel, squinting into your warped plate and trying to remember whether left is right in reflections. You make the first careful scrape. Success. One rogue curl falls into the breeze, caught by the wind and swept into the sea, where it will probably be mistaken for seaweed by an unfortunate fish. There's a rhythm to it. A slow, patient drag of shell or metal along the skin. You go with the grain, Because you've learned the hard way what happens when you don't. And by now, you've got scars to prove it. You take a break, shake your hand loose, and glance across the deck. One of the younger lads is trying to shape his mustache using the tip of a fishhook. You admire the ambition. Less so the hygiene. Nearby, someone's sharpening a blade on their boot sole. Another pirate is biting split ends off with his teeth like a goat with anxiety. And yet, there's a strange dignity to it all. Beard grooming aboard a pirate ship isn't about looking good. It's about looking presentable by pirate standards. It's about keeping a piece of yourself civilized in a world of cannon smoke, moldy biscuits, and grog that could dissolve paint. You watch an older sailor finish trimming and tie a bit of cloth around his beard to hold its shape. It's floral. No one questions it. Some pirates grew beards for intimidation. The bigger, bushier, and wilder, the better. Others kept it neat, sharp, almost noble, more corsair than chaos. Your own beard? Somewhere in the middle. You don't need to look like a sea demon. You just don't want anyone mistaking you for driftwood. As the wind picks up and the ship groans against the current, you give your reflection one last glance. Not perfect, but tidy. The kind of beard that says, I haven't totally given up on myself, even if you just wiped a seagull dropping off your shoulder. You pack away your tools, such as they are. The clamshell, chipped but still functional. The bent plate. A scrap of cloth with mysterious stains that you choose not to investigate too closely. Then, with a deep breath and a slightly itchy chin, you rise. One more trim survived. One more day not claimed by lice, rust, or clumsy ambition. You didn't invent the pirate beard trim. But you're keeping it alive, one wobbly line at a time. You hear the sound before you see him, metal clinking gently, a low hum like a lullaby sung by someone who's stitched too many wounds. It's the barber surgeon, shuffling across the deck with a crate of clattering instruments and the kind of smile that makes you instinctively flinch. Every ship had one. Not because pirates were obsessed with hygiene, but because someone needed to stop the bleeding when legs went missing or teeth rebelled. And, naturally, that someone was also in charge of beard trims. 2 roles. One very blood-stained apron. He sets up shop beneath the overhang near the galley, a patch of shade, and more importantly, fewer gulls. You drift closer, joining the loose half-circle of crewmen hovering around like nervous sheep waiting for a trim and maybe a little judgment. The tools are laid out. A pair of rust-flecked scissors, a dull razor, a comb with 3 surviving teeth, and something that might be a tooth extractor but looks like it moonlights as a torture device. It's part spa, part emergency room. You take a seat on an overturned barrel, nodding politely to the man who once lanced a boil on your thigh with terrifying enthusiasm. Now, he's got a new task, evening out the wild chaos under your chin. Bit of a rogue wave on the left cheek, he mutters, squinting like your beard has personally offended him. Then, with surgeon's precision and a mild tremor, he begins. The scissors snip. The razor drags. You grip the barrel tight, not entirely sure if you're about to look better or lose an ear. Barber surgeons weren't always well trained. Some were former apprentices, failed medical students, or just unlucky enough to be near the first aid kit when someone fell overboard and came back with an eel bite. Still, they were essential. On long voyages, wounds and infections were constant threats. A well-placed trim wasn't just vanity, it helped prevent lice colonies from nesting or sores from festering. Plus, a groomed crew gave the illusion of discipline, which helped when approaching ports that didn't care much for seafaring freelancers. Historians still argue whether these barbers were respected or just feared. Some records describe them as trusted confidants, others as shipboard butchers who happened to own scissors. Truth's probably somewhere in between. You glance to your left. Another sailor's getting a tooth pulled with the same hands that just adjusted your mustache. You remind yourself not to think too hard about that. Of course, etiquette was important. You don't talk during the trim. You don't flinch. And you definitely don't ask if he's used this razor on anyone's backside. The barber wipes your cheek with a rum-soaked rag. Not out of luxury. It's the closest thing to sterilization available. You breathe through your mouth as the fumes tickle your sinuses and maybe remove a memory or two. There's an odd intimacy to it. This ritual of grooming amid chaos. The world tilts and groans, the sails snap above like angry ghosts, and yet here you are being shaped. Humanized. Given a semblance of care. The man moves on to your neck. You do your best impression of a statue, only twitching when a splinter from the barrel tries to unionize with your thigh. Nearby, the crew gossips. A story about someone who shaved with broken glass. Another tale of a first mate who braided his beard into a whip during boarding raids. None of it seems entirely true. All of it sounds completely possible. You remember a story about a pirate named Slender Pete, whose entire beard was accidentally singed off during a lightning strike. Supposedly he grew it back out of spite. Thicker. Bolder. Twice as fiery. Historians still debate whether lightning was involved or if someone just sneezed while holding a torch. Your barber finishes with a quick flick of the razor, then steps back, inspecting his work with the intensity of a man examining a cannonball for cracks. Good enough to scare a merchant, he says with pride. You nod. That's probably the highest compliment available. In truth, it looks surprisingly tidy. The lines are uneven, sure. There's still salt crust near your chin, and your mustache leans slightly left, like it's pondering its life choices. But you feel lighter. Sharper. Maybe even slightly less doomed. You offer a quiet thank you, and he shrugs, already motioning the next soul to the stool. This one's got a beard that looks like it lost a bet with a raccoon. The system continues. Beard after beard, cleaned and shaped with the same set of weary tools and unspoken understanding. It's not about looking handsome. It's about looking like you haven't entirely given up. You walk away, face tingling slightly, the sea air rushing over freshly exposed skin. You can smell the salt, the faint trace of old rum, and something herbal the barber never explained. Probably from that mystery bottle he keeps tied to his belt, the one no one touches unless bitten by something venomous. Later, you'll sleep better. Somehow, a trimmed beard makes the itchy hammock feel more forgiving. You'll dream of smoother seas, cleaner razors, and a comb that doesn't resemble a broken rake. But for now, you simply nod to yourself. Surviving at sea is hard. Surviving with style? That's a kind of rebellion. There's a particular smell that hits you as you descend into the hold, a pungent, sweet, cloying swirl of tobacco, citrus, and something vaguely medicinal. You wrinkle your nose but follow the scent. It's beard oil day. Well, beard oil might be generous. On land, perhaps, there'd be fragrant pomades infused with lavender or sandalwood. At sea, you get what's available. Usually a curious mix of leftover rum, crushed tobacco, rancid pig fat, and the zest from the least moldy orange. But you're not picky. You want that shine. That soft gleam in your beard that tells the world, yes, I smell like fermented rope, but at least I tried. You duck beneath a low beam and spot old Morris stirring his latest concoction in a tin mug with the tip of a marlinspike. He claims to have been a barber back in Bristol. More likely he was a chimney sweep who found the sea more forgiving than soot. Still, the man has a nose for ingredients and a beard so shiny it's been mistaken for wet ink. You sit beside him, careful not to knock over the ingredients laid out on an overturned crate: dried orange peels, a stub of vanilla bean, a splash of aged grog, 2 crushed tobacco leaves, and something that may have once been garlic or a fossilized shrimp. You don't ask. He hands you the mug. Massage it in. Careful around the jawline. Last guy caught a rash. You nod solemnly. You remember that rash. It looked like cartography. And not the pleasant kind. You dip your fingers in and start rubbing the mixture into your beard. It's warm, somehow, maybe from the metal, maybe from the friction of the ship itself. The scent is shockingly decent. Fruity, smoky, slightly roguish. If there were a cologne called Desperate Swashbuckler, this would be the base note. Pirates didn't just use oils to condition their beards. They used them to protect. From the wind, from the salt, from the endless dryness that cracked skin and left hair brittle as tinder. Beard oils created a barrier, a small, fragrant defense against the elements. And yes, there were recipes. Passed down in murmured tones. Swapped between ships like treasure. One favorite blend involved duck grease, eucalyptus, and the tears of a French prisoner. That last part's probably metaphorical. Probably. Historians still argue whether these concoctions were truly for grooming or just multi-use slop. Some believe they doubled as salve, lubricant, even insect repellent. Others say pirates just enjoyed the novelty of smelling slightly less awful once a month. Morris swears by his rum-based blend. Claims it prevents beard rot. You posit that. Beard rot? He nods, solemn. I happened to a Spaniard once. Woke up with half a beard gone and a patch of green fluff. Like cheese. You apply the oil a bit faster. Some crewmen skip the oil, opting instead for smoke. Literally. Standing over the galley vent to let the cooking fumes baste their beards. A kind of culinary conditioning. It works, in a way. Their beards always smell like soup. Others, less patient, dab lemon juice onto their chins, citing vague medical wisdom and a story about a Dutch captain who avoided scurvy purely through facial acidity. You tried it once. It burned for 3 days and attracted bees. Your favorite blend? The old standby, crushed peppermint and whale blubber. The scent sticks around, and the blubber's water resistant. Sure, it's hard to come by now, whale oil being slightly out of reach unless someone's got a harpoon and a free afternoon, but once upon a time, it was considered prime beard food. Some men take things further, braiding their beards with strings soaked in cinnamon oil. Others add decorative beads or bits of polished shell. One bold fellow even wove a fishbone into his goatee, claiming it kept spirits away. Mostly, it kept conversation away. You remember one wild-eyed cook who mixed gunpowder into his bum? Said it gave his beard authority. It also gave him a minor explosion when he stood too close to a piped smoker. As you finish rubbing in Morris's blend, you take a deep breath. The smell, though complex, feels oddly comforting. Homey, in a way. Like a memory of land before everything got damp and slightly cursed. A nearby crate serves as a makeshift mirror, its side polished to a dull sheen by years of handling. You peer in. Your beard looks fuller, healthier, vaguely glowing in the torchlight. You feel almost dashing. Like a man who might win a duel or flirt with a tavern maid without being mistaken for a walrus. Morris grins. Told you. Beard of champions, that is. You nod, stand, and stretch. The ship rocks gently beneath your feet, a constant lullaby of motion. You step out onto the deck again, the wind catching your now glossy beard and lifting a few strands like streamers at a very underfunded parade. A nearby sailor catches the scent and wrinkles his nose. What did you use? Smells like a bar fight in a candy shop. You smile. Exactly. Because for all its chaos, all its crudeness, the pirate beard routine, if you can call it that, is about more than hygiene. It's about trying. About crafting something decent in a world built on splinters and storms. About shaping identity on a floating plank of madness. You tuck the last few oily strands back into place. The sun sets behind you, a smear of gold and tangerine on the horizon. Your beard glows in its light. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel a little victorious. The sun has just dipped below the line of the sea, and the deck is turning the color of warm brass. Lanterns flicker to life, swaying on hooks, casting dancing shadows across faces weathered by sun and salt. Yours among them, now slightly shinier, thanks to the beard oil still lingering in your whiskers. You lean on the railing, beard freshly massaged, and take in the crew. This ship is a study in facial hair anthropology. No two beards alike. Some look carefully shaped, others like something escaped from a squirrel's nest and never looked back. But one thing's clear. Out here, a man's beard means something. A neatly trimmed beard says you've still got some dignity left. That you haven't entirely descended into chaos. That maybe, just maybe, you still believe land exists and doesn't smell like wet boots. But beyond vanity, a pirate's beard can shape his status. You notice Jenkins, the quartermaster, strolling the deck with his signature sideburns angled, sharp, and oiled to a gleam. He trims them daily, rumor has it with a bit of glass borrowed from a shattered spyglass. And somehow, despite the lack of water, soap, or scents, he keeps them looking fierce. When he walks, people notice. When he growls, people listen. That's the power of presentation. In a world with no rank insignia, no crisp uniforms, beards become the uniform. And then there's Whistler Tom. His beard is an enigma. Long, braided down to his belt, with seashells tied into the ends. He whistles through it, literally. The shape of it redirects the wind past his lips in a way that somehow always sounds like a sea shanty. A strange talent. Possibly haunted. But no one messes with him. You're somewhere in between. Respectable. Not too flamboyant. But tonight, as the sea calms and the crew settles into their nightly routines, you consider stepping up your beard game. Why? Because morale matters. Historians often debate how pirates maintained cohesion on ships where the only law was what you could shout louder than everyone else. Some argue that shared rituals, like beard grooming, helped create structure. Others say it was sheer vanity, men clinging to a sense of self in a world designed to strip it away. Either way, a neat beard is an anchor in rough seas. There's a story passed around among the crew, maybe true, maybe just the kind of tale fermented by grog and boredom. About a pirate named Captain Mirror Beard. Real name long forgotten. They say his beard was so precise, so geometrically symmetrical, that he used it to measure wind direction. That man would line up for miles just to see him trim it, like some bearded oracle. What's more likely is this: pirates, like anyone, wanted to be noticed. They wanted to stand out. In a world where fame was fleeting and your gravestone might just be a coral reef, a signature beard was something to be remembered by. And then there's the practical side. During boarding raids, a fierce beard could be armor. Intimidation mattered. The bigger and wilder the facial hair, the more deranged you looked bursting over a railing with a cutlass. Think Blackbeard, whose beard was said to smoke with slow-burning fuses and snarl in the wind like something from a sailor's nightmare. Some sailors wet themselves at the sight. Probably not helped by the fact that he was also waving a pistol in each hand. Others took a different route. A clean-cut beard, just short enough to show you meant business, just tidy enough to hint you could tie a knot with your teeth if needed. These were the tactical thinkers, the quiet ones who always had a second blade hidden in their boot. You watch two younger crew members arguing over whether a goatee makes one look wise or like a cursed goat. It turns into a philosophical debate that you suspect may never resolve. But even that's part of the magic. Beards, here, are a canvas for character. You think back to a boarding party weeks ago when Jenkins climbed aboard an enemy brig and the crew practically laughed themselves breathless at the sight of him, until they saw the beard. He didn't even have to speak. One stroke of his chin, one glare down the nose, and suddenly they were tossing their weapons overboard like children returning stolen sweets. Facial authority. It's real. Even the captain takes his beard seriously. His is gray at the tips, streaked like storm clouds. Always braided, always tied back. In one braid, he keeps a bead said to be carved from the mast of a cursed ship. Another holds the tooth of a monkey that once tried to assassinate him. He won't explain. We all just nod and accept it. When you're living in a floating plank village surrounded by madness, you cling to whatever helps you feel like someone. And tonight, as the wind settles and your beard stops fluttering quite so theatrically, you realize something. You feel good. Not clean. Not quite. But shaped. Like you're still playing the game. Still showing up. Still human. You reach up and trace the lines you trimmed earlier. Not perfect. But firm. And maybe, just maybe, a little more authoritative. Tomorrow, who knows? Storms, raids, mutiny, or worse, inventory. But for now, with your beard reflecting moonlight and your chin tingling faintly with pride, you rest your elbows on the railing and sigh. Even at sea, some things are worth the effort. The night rolls on, moonlight silvering the sails, and below deck, someone yelps. That can mean many things on a pirate ship: bad stew, a falling hammock, or, as you soon learn, an unfortunate encounter with fire and facial hair. You duck below just in time to see poor Isaac patting his chin with frantic palms. A curl of smoke drifts upward. His goatee is, well, it was a goatee. Now it's more of a smoldering memory. Turns out, he leaned too close to the galley flame while trying to light his pipe. A single ember, 1 second too slow, and poof, crispy whiskers. You've just witnessed what's known below decks as a beard burn mishap, a surprisingly common hazard among sea folk who enjoy both facial hair and fire, often simultaneously. And it's not just carelessness, it's the beard itself. Thick, dry, sometimes stiff with salt or leftover oil, beards aboard ship are basically tinder waiting for an excuse. You help Isaac dab his jaw with a damp rag. He looks dazed, like someone just slapped him with a broom made of betrayal. His beard may regrow, but his pride? That could take months. Fire isn't the only threat. Fleas, lice, and all their jumpy little cousins see your beard not as hair, but as prime real estate. That's why some pirates took grooming seriously, not out of fashion, but sheer self-defense. Take Rodrigo. Sleeps in a hammock above you, snores like a cannon with a sinus infection. He shaves patches of his beard every third day, not for style, but to check for guests. If they bite, he says, you know you missed one. He keeps a special blend of garlic oil and powdered chalk to deter invaders. The smell clears a 10-foot radius around him. The deterrent works for both insects and conversation. Others take to fire in more deliberate ways. You once saw a man run the edge of a candle flame along his beard to sterilize it. The logic? Heat kills pests. The reality? He singed off half his left eyebrow and never quite got the smell out of his shirt. Some crews even held contests for the boldest flame-proof beard. Men rubbed ash into their beards, braided in damp cloth strips, or used wet seaweed as protective beard armor. The results? Equal parts comedy and minor injury. One legendary tale involves a pirate nicknamed Torchchin. The story goes that he coated his beard in goose fat and danced through a ring of fire during a drunken bet. His beard survived. His eyebrows didn't. But his reputation? Absolutely immortal. Historians still argue whether these fire games were ritual, boredom, or madness dressed in bravado. Most agree it was likely all three. You've never intentionally burned your beard, but the fear lingers. Every time the galley cook swings his pot too wide, or someone lights a pipe beside you without warning, you reflexively cup your chin like a mother guarding her young. You remember a time the powder monkey spilled a keg of black powder near the crew's sleeping quarters. The ship's master-at-arms gave a speech afterward. "Keep your flint away from your fringe," he said, "or you'll wake up looking like a hairless parrot." There are other hazards, too. Rats, for instance, which aren't picky about where they scurry in the night. You once woke to find a small one perched on your chest, contemplating your beard with what can only be described as culinary curiosity. After that, you began sleeping with your beard braided tight, woven close to your face, with the ends tucked under your collar like a secret. It doesn't look great, but it beats being nibbled. Even so, not everyone is so lucky. There's always that one sailor who insists on wearing beard beads, tiny decorative trinkets he swears are lucky. You watched him spend half a day trying to untangle a cockroach that got stuck in one. The roach didn't look impressed. Tonight, the galley's cleared of smoke. Isaac sitting in the corner, beard now trimmed to a reluctant patch. Someone offered to draw eyebrows on him with charcoal. He didn't laugh. And you? You're inspecting your own beard, running your fingers along the edges, sniffing for any hint of singe. Nothing yet. But you make a mental note, no smoking near oil day. Ever. The crew eventually quiets. The lanterns dim. You lie back in your hammock, beard now safely tied with a string of damp linen as precaution. You rock with the waves, eyelids drooping. But sleep doesn't come easy when you know your facial hair is one stray spark away from becoming a cautionary tale. Still, you grin to yourself. There's a strange kind of camaraderie in this chaos. A brotherhood of beards burnt, braided, or bitten. All united in one absurd truth. Keeping a beard at sea is a dangerous act of optimism. Morning again. A pale wash of sun creeps across the deck, revealing piles of ropes, empty tankards, and a sailor curled up with a chicken. You stretch, beard still faintly oily, and look for your grooming tool of the day, a flask. Not for drinking, well, not just, but for checking your reflection. Welcome to the world of pirate mirrors. They're rare. Glass doesn't travel well in storms, cannon fights, or the occasional drunken duel involving a flying boot. So pirates improvise. Anything even remotely reflective becomes a tool of self-inspection: polished metal, still water, the bottom of a grog cup, or, your current favorite, a dented, shiny rum flask that distorts your face into a friendly potato. You tip the flask this way and that, squinting at your jawline. Is that a shadow, or just the ghost of last night's stew? Hard to say. Still, it works well enough to guide your hand as you smooth out the sleeping kinks in your beard. Nearby, another crewmate is attempting something similar with a spoon. He holds it at arm's length, flipping it back and forth, trying to remember which side gives the correct reflection. Eventually, he sighs and gives up, using his fingers to fluff his beard into what he calls the tempest shape. It's less of a style and more of a cry for help. Mirrors were a luxury at sea, and owning one often meant you'd looted someone wealthier or were absurdly sentimental. Some pirates carried fragments of mirror glass wrapped in cloth, pulling them out like sacred artifacts. One man swore he'd polished the back of a frying pan so thoroughly he could count his own pores. He could not. You've heard tales of a captain who used the surface of his polished compass lid to shave. Supposedly, he believed the compass not only showed direction but would guide him to a perfectly symmetrical goatee. Historians still argue whether he was mad or just deeply committed to his personal brand. On truly desperate days, there's always the soup method. The trick is to wait until the galleys dished out the daily ration, usually a kind of watery broth with floating mysteries. Then, when no one's looking, you crouch over the bowl and wait for the surface to settle. If the lighting's right and the wind isn't stirring the sea through the cracks in the hull, you might catch a glimpse of yourself. You tried it once. You ended up with hot carrots in your nose and a ladle to the temple. Lesson learned. The boldest grooming reflectors, however, are the cannonballs. Freshly polished after every use, because pirates, despite their reputation, do maintain their weapons, cannonballs offer a kind of smoky, distorted reflection. You can't see much. But sometimes, that's enough. You walk over to the nearest one now. It's nestled beside the mainmast, catching sunlight like a lazy black pearl. You lean in, see your face ripple across its surface like a ghost. It's wobbly, yes. A little abstract. But you catch sight of a rogue tuft near your chin and nip it off with your belt knife. Success. One crew member, Shiny Pete, has taken this method to extremes. He polishes a cannonball daily and carries it in a sling across his back. Says it's both grooming tool and weapon. One day he was seen kissing it goodnight. No one asked questions. There's a quiet dignity in these improvisations. Pirates were scrappy, yes, but not without pride. When your whole life is noise of wind, waves, yelling, creaking, you carve out silence wherever you can. And sometimes, silence looks like leaning over a cannonball at dawn to check your stubble. It's also a form of control. You don't get to steer the weather. You don't choose when the next raid is. You can't stop the deck from bucking under your feet like a drunk eel. But you can trim that mustache. You can flatten that left side puff that always tries to become a sideburn rebellion. Some captains even made grooming mandatory. Part of inspection. One story tells of a first mate who was demoted for failing to remove soup chunks from his beard before muster. It's the little things. And appearance mattered during negotiations. Pirates didn't just storm ships, they made deals, intimidated merchants, and occasionally parleyed with governors who pretended not to notice the smell. Looking composed even in a slapdash, sea-worn way was part of the act. A semi-groomed beard could be the difference between respect and being laughed off the dock. You once watched the quartermaster spend 20 minutes polishing his beard with a torn silk sleeve before boarding a merchant vessel. When asked why, he replied, "Can't rob a man if he's too busy laughing at your chin." Back on deck, the wind picks up. You catch your reflection in the flask again, this time with fewer carrot echoes, and nod in satisfaction. Not perfect, but presentable. Maybe even a little jaunty. A sailor nearby gives you a thumbs up, then attempts to inspect his own beard in the shiny back of a spoon. He pokes himself in the eye and mutters something about sorcery. You nod in quiet solidarity. There's no vanity in these routines. Only survival. And a kind of odd, floating theater. You are the actor, your beard the costume, the ship your stage. And though the audience is mostly rats and bored gulls, you perform all the same. Because here, at sea, a glint of self-awareness is worth its weight in mirrors. You've seen it coming for days. The tension, the side glances, the exaggerated chin stroking. It starts with small things. A muttered insult during morning grog, a suspicious sneer during shaving hour, and now it's finally happened. An actual dispute over facial hair has erupted mid-deck. Two sailors, both proud possessors of frankly absurd mustaches, are standing nose to nose, or rather, mustache to mustache, arguing loudly over who sported the better curl. You pause with your breakfast biscuit halfway to your mouth. On the left, Finn, owner of a grand, looping handlebar that could double as a grappling hook in the right lighting. On the right, Matteo, with a needle-fine twist that curves like a calligrapher's flourish. The air is thick with beard oil, rum breath, and wounded pride. You watch as Finn points accusingly. He stole my curl technique. Matteo scoffs. Yours flops in humidity. Mine defies the sea. You inch closer. This is far better than last week's drama over who got the last dried mango slice. Pirates are passionate men. Passionate and increasingly invested in their grooming identities. Things escalate quickly. There's shouting. There's brandishing of combs. One of them references the Great Mustache Pact of Montego Bay, a fictional agreement they may or may not have invented just now. The rest of the crew begins to gather, whispering and watching with the solemn eye usually reserved for storms and gambling. Here's the thing: facial hair feuds were real. Especially on pirate ships where personal space is a myth and every sailor is secretly convinced he's the protagonist. Beards and mustaches became symbols. Not just of hygiene, but hierarchy, pride, individuality. And in such a high-pressure, low-sleep, high-grog environment, those symbols mattered. Historians still argue whether pirate ships had formal grooming rules, or if style just evolved via sheer peer pressure and passive-aggressive glances during chow. Some accounts suggest certain crews adopted uniform grooming, like synchronized stubble. Others encouraged full facial anarchy. You once met a pirate with half his face clean-shaven and the other side braided like seaweed. He claimed it was a visual metaphor for the duality of man. Or possibly, he just lost a bet. Back on deck, Finn has drawn a line on the planks with his comb. Winner gets the rum ration, he declares. Matteo responds by pulling out his mirror spoon. Oh no. It's on. In an unusual burst of democracy, the crew decides on a beard-off. 2 competitors. 5 minutes. One judged by applause. You're appointed the timekeeper. A weighty responsibility, considering the last time you tried to tell time, it was with a sunbeam, a shadow, and sheer guesswork. The competition begins. Matteo applies a touch of citrus oil, borrowed from Cookie's galley stash. Finn counters with pipe smoke, wafting it gently around his whiskers like an incense ritual. The crew leans in, enchanted. A few even wipe tears. One weeps into his sleeve and mutters, "Reminds me of my uncle's wedding, the artistry is undeniable." Twists, curls, gravity-defying flourishes. Matteo's mustache now resembles a wave mid-crest. Finn's boasts symmetrical swoops so sharp they could slice rope. You call time. There is silence. Then, a roaring cheer for both. It's too close to call. The captain, who's been watching from the quarterdeck with a tankard in one hand and a curious grin on his face, breaks the tie. Split the rum. But next time, settle it with arm wrestling. Or poetry. I'm tired of beard bristles in the grog. Everyone laughs. Tension dissolves. The rum is poured. Peace, for now, is restored. You let out a slow breath. Pirate diplomacy, somehow, always smells faintly of oranges and burnt hair. Later, as the sun sets and the sea turns the color of old copper, you reflect on what you've seen. This wasn't just an ego battle. It was a display of identity. At sea, names blur. Stories twist. But a beard? That's yours. You shape it. You care for it. You defend it against rats, fire, and your bunkmate's curious child-sized scissors. And sometimes, you defend it against another beard. You remember once hearing that French privateers used to dye their beards with crushed berries before entering battle, something about looking fierce and unhinged. Others wore bells or beads that clinked with every step, announcing their arrival like pirate wind chimes. Still others shaped their beards into arrows, symbols, or abstract insults aimed at rival captains. One captain even tattooed lines beneath his beard. Said it was a secret code that only appeared when he shaved. He never explained further, and no one ever asked him to prove it. There's a lesson here, floating somewhere between ridiculous and remarkable. In a world without mirrors, without hairstylists, and with far too much weather, these men turned their faces into flags. Into symbols. Into declarations. Your own beard twitches in the evening breeze. Nothing flashy. But solid. Consistent. A beard that says, I've seen things. I've avoided most of them. You take out your flask one more time. Just a glance. Just a check. No new lice. No signs of combustion. Still tidy. You smile. Not bad at all. It's the dead middle of the night, sails creaking softly, the ocean humming like a lullaby under your bones. You sit tucked into a coil of rope, watching a few crewmen bicker over a rat with a suspiciously long tail. You're not concerned. Your attention is on the pair nearby, deep in a philosophical grooming debate. Naval men, one of them mutters, all slick and trimmed like they're off to a wedding. The other nods solemnly. Aye, but no character. You see a Navy lad and know exactly what you're dealing with. Clean beard. Clean conscience. Boring. It's true. There's a stark contrast between pirates and their naval counterparts, not just in flags and orders, but in the way they wear their beards. And you, caught somewhere between admiration and rebellion, can't help but notice it every time you dock. Navy men shave. Often. Regularly. On purpose. Their grooming reflects order, discipline, chain of command. Beards are allowed, sometimes even encouraged, but they're maintained with the precision of a military parade. There's a regulation length. There's trimming protocol. Rumor has it there's even a chart. Pirates, on the other hand? Wild. Unregulated. Fierce. You see it in the eyes of young sailors switching sides. The day they jump ship, the first thing many of them do is let their beard grow out, as if each new inch is another ounce of freedom, another rule broken. The transformation from neatly shaven servant of empire to gloriously tangled sea rascal is almost instant. One of the crew, young Jim with the hopeful eyes, once served under a naval lieutenant. "We had shaving rotation," he explained. "Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And if your sideburns weren't even, you peeled potatoes for a week." Now, Jim hasn't shaved in a month. He smiles with crumbs in his whiskers and pride in his posture. Historians still debate whether the contrast in grooming styles had practical origins or was purely symbolic. Was it about hygiene? Identity? Or simply lack of access to mirrors and clippers when you're dodging cannonballs? Regardless, it matters. Pirates took pride in looking ungovernable. Beards were more than hair, they were attitude. A deliberate departure from the tight collars and naval cuffs of the world they'd rejected. Of course, that doesn't mean pirates were without standards. Quite the opposite. There was an unspoken grooming code. You might be dirty, but not sloppy. Beard wild? Acceptable. Beard infested? Grounds for mutiny. You keep your knots tied and your beard free of crawling passengers. Naval crews, on the other hand, practiced grooming like it was warfare. A clean-shaven face might not win battles, but it won points with officers who valued appearances. And in their minds, a neat beard suggested control. You remember a port night somewhere near Tortuga. A group of Royal Navy sailors wandered into a tavern where your crew was already loudly losing a dice game and making philosophical toasts to freedom and fermented fish. The standoff was instant. Clean collars versus stained tunics. Waxed mustaches versus seafoam sideburns. One of the Navy lads scoffed, "Do none of you own a razor?" One of your crew smiled wide and replied, "Do you?" Tension hung in the air like a badly aimed cannonball. Until someone dropped a drink, someone else started a song, and the whole thing dissolved into a beard measuring contest, both figurative and literal. Your side won. Or so you recall. But deep down, you've always admired the Navy lads a bit. The sharp edges. The symmetry. The calm, calculated lines of a face that hasn't been kissed by a slap of seaweed mid-sneeze. You wonder what it's like to shave daily. To know that no rogue rat has nested in your sideburns. To look in a mirror and not see sea spray dried into your jawline. And yet, there's comfort in your mess. Pride, even. Because pirates don't groom to conform. They groom to proclaim. Every beard says something. Yours says, "I've survived 3 storms, a hammock collapse, and 1 emotional outburst involving pickled eggs, and I'm still handsome, somehow." There are exceptions, of course. Some pirate crews mimic Navy structure. Fancy themselves gentlemen of fortune. Their beards? Tidy, curled, stylish. Dandified. They wield combs like daggers and swear by scented oils smuggled in from Lisbon. You respect them. You also avoid sitting near them during meals. Then there are the anarchists. The full-beard zealots. The ones who let it grow and grow until it looks like a storm cloud landed on their chin. You suspect they sleep in a beard hammock. Somewhere in the middle is where most pirates live. Trimming with broken shells, cleaning with citrus and spit, maintaining just enough order to feel human. And it is about feeling human. On a ship ruled by salt and chaos, your beard is one of the few things you own entirely. Your story, sculpted one strand at a time. You look down now at your own reflection, just barely visible in the sheen of your blade. Navel clean or pirate proud? You smile. Definitely pirate proud. You're sprawled on the deck during midday rest, chewing something that claims to be bread, when someone mentions Blackbeard. Immediately, heads turn. A few nearby sailors mutter in half awe, half fear. The name still carries weight, even years after his famous demise. And not because of his loot, or his ships, or even his body count. No, what stirs the air and straightens spines is the beard, the terrifying, theatrical, utterly iconic beard. Legend has it that when Blackbeard went into battle, he braided cannon fuses into his thick black beard and lit them so that his face glowed with smoke and fire. Picture it, the chaos of boarding, smoke swirling, and out of it lurches a wild-eyed man with actual fire snaking around his chin. It was less bearded pirate and more infernal sea demon. Historians still argue whether he truly lit his beard with slow-burning matches, or whether that story got juiced up over time by frightened merchants and overeager broadsheets. But regardless, the effect was real. His beard was myth, and he knew it. You scratch your own chin and try to imagine your beard smoking ominously in the breeze. You'd probably set off someone's hammock. But it's not just Blackbeard. Pirate beards have always played a role in legend and propaganda. From painted engravings to tavern songs to those exaggerated wanted posters nailed outside dockside pubs, facial hair became shorthand for danger, defiance, and dramatic flair. A good beard said, "This man is wild. This man is not to be trusted. This man might steal your ship, your coin, and possibly your heart." The public, especially on land, devoured the image. In prints and pamphlets, pirate beards were always impossibly large, twisted, and dark. Even if the man in question had a modest goatee, the artist's imagination would fill in the rest. Huge sideburns, curling mustaches, devilish tufts. It was artful villainy, one whisker at a time. You once saw an old broadsheet where every pirate looked like they were hosting beehives on their chins. It was probably inaccurate, but effective. Some pirates played into it. They grew out their beards intentionally, dyed them with ash or soot, and fluffed them out before landfall. Because the more terrifying you looked, the less likely someone was to resist. It was psychological warfare via facial hair. Take Bloody Banks, a man known less for his swordsmanship and more for the blood-red dye he soaked his beard in before every boarding raid. He claimed it was to honor Neptune. More likely, it was to make merchants faint. There was also Gentleman Joe, who wore lace in his beard and scented it with lavender stolen from a French perfumery. His whole image was refined terror. 1 second quoting Virgil, the next swinging onto your deck with a cutlass in one hand and beard ribbons fluttering like battle flags. The line between truth and theater was always blurred. You've heard of pirates who wore miniature bells in their beard braids. Others who shaved cryptic symbols into the sides of their jaws. One even carved a tiny skull bead from his own tooth and tied it near his chin. Disturbing? Yes. Memorable? Also yes. Even captured pirates sometimes got a final portrait drawn before execution. And in almost every case, the artist emphasized the beard. Bold, defiant, untamed. A last gesture of rebellion. You may hang me, the beard seems to say, but you'll never tame me. There's power in that. And you, sitting on this swaying deck with biscuit crumbs clinging to your mustache, suddenly feel it too. Your beard isn't famous. It doesn't frighten royalty or haunt pamphlets. But it's yours. It tells your story. And like the legends before you, you've learned how to make it part of your character, your presence. You know the sea has a long memory. It forgets names. It swallows treasure. But sometimes, just sometimes, it remembers a face framed in salt-stiff hair and smoke. As the breeze shifts and the ship groans forward, you catch your reflection in a puddle, distorted, but recognizable. The beard, a little sun-faded, a little uneven, curls in just the right way. Not fearsome, perhaps, but respectable. Bold enough to demand fair treatment. Soft enough to suggest you won't light anyone on fire. Yet, somewhere in the distance, a crewman starts humming an old ballad, something about a one-eyed pirate and his crimson bristle of doom. A few others join in, laughing. You lean back and hum along, your beard swaying gently in the sea breeze. No fire. No fuses. Just a little story tangled in the hairs of your chin. Because whether painted in ink or whispered in song, every beard at sea is a legend in the making. The humidity hits you first. A thick, warm slap of air that clings to your skin and seeps into your beard like it's trying to claim squatters' rights. You've made port in the Caribbean, and the ship now rocks gently in a sheltered cove, a rare moment of stillness, though your beard feels like it's begun growing moss. You've heard the tropics described in poetic terms, lush, golden, paradise. But for facial hair? It's a fungal wonderland. Within hours, your chin feels swampy. You scratch absently, but that only makes things worse. A few strands near your jaw have started to curl upward, as if rebelling against gravity and basic dignity. You consider dunking your whole face in a rain barrel. The climate in these parts forces even the most rugged pirates to re-evaluate their grooming strategy. The sun bakes you from above, while the humidity steams you from below. Sweat gathers in your beard like it's collecting rent. If you've ever wanted to simulate living in a teapot, now's your chance. Some of the crew tie their beards in small cloth bundles to keep them off their necks. Others braid them into tight coils, hoping to reduce surface area and, by extension, sweatiness. It rarely works. The tropics also bring new creatures into play. Small midges, flying ants, moisture-loving mites. You once caught a beetle trying to nest behind your ear. You let it stay. Named it Kevin. It left after 2 days. You still miss him. Pirates in this region sometimes adapt by shaving more frequently, just the neck, maybe the cheeks, or a full reset if they're brave. There's an unspoken rule: you don't mock the man who shaves in the tropics. He's not quitting. He's surviving. You remember once watching Jenkins, the quartermaster, emerge from his hammock with a completely clean chin. Gasps followed. The captain raised an eyebrow. But Jenkins just pointed at his sweat-soaked pillow and said, "My beard tried to drown me." Historians still argue whether climate directly influenced grooming trends, or if it was just about convenience. But the evidence is there, in sketches, journals, even recovered ship logs. In warmer regions, beards got shorter, simpler, more practical. Gone were the days of flamboyant braids and decorative beads. Now it was all about not growing mold. That doesn't mean style disappeared. Far from it. Pirates in the Caribbean became masters of adaptive flair. Beads were swapped for feathers lighter, less prone to mildew. Some used crushed coconut husk as beard powder. Others claimed to comb their beards with fish bones to aerate the follicles. There's even a whispered tale of a flamboyant Dutchman known as Captain Breeze who trained his parrot to pluck bugs out of his beard. The bird reportedly sang sea shanties while doing it. You never met the man, but part of you hopes he was real. You dab your beard with a scrap of linen soaked in rum and lemon, your tropical tonic of choice. It stings, but it helps. The scent wards off insects, the acidity cuts through the grime, and the alcohol makes you forget you just used cooking rum as skin care. Nearby, Cookie has rigged a clever contraption, a half coconut shell tied to the rigging, filled with cool water and angled perfectly for rinsing your face without dunking your whole torso. It's not glamorous, but it's genius. A few crewmen are gathered around it now, taking turns splashing water into their beards and sighing like it's the finest spa in Tortuga. One fellow hums as he does it, his beard dripping like a wet mop that found enlightenment. Then there's O.L. Toby, who insists on drying his beard by sticking his face out over the prow during high-speed sailing. He calls it natural styling. You call it a good way to catch a seagull. There are other tactics, too. Some rub aloe into their skin post-trim, others use a mixture of crushed mint and seawater as a cooling wash. One fellow tried to dry his beard with gunpowder dust. He no longer has eyebrows. Adaptation becomes necessity. The Caribbean is as beautiful as it is brutal. It smells of salt and sugar and slow rot. And your beard? It's both a casualty and a warrior in this climate war. Yet somehow, despite the sweat and the stench and the looming threat of mildew, you find a certain rhythm. You rinse in the morning. You tie back the ends with oiled twine. You fan your face with a hat when the sun's too strong. And at night, you comb through it carefully, not for vanity, but to make sure nothing is hatching. Because even here, in the tropics, especially here, your beard still matters. It's the last clean thing you can control. A marker of resilience. A soggy, sun-blasted, insect-threatened badge of honor. You lean against the mast, breathing in the thick, ripe air. Your beard clings to your face like a damp scarf, but you don't mind. The sun sets golden over the tree-line, casting long shadows across the deck. And as the crew gathers for supper, you smile, because despite the heat, despite the mold, despite the strange things now living in Jenkins' sideburns, you're still bearded. Still proud. Still, unmistakably pirate. You wake to shouting. Not the usual panic shouting, no storm, no fire, no one's caught a squid the size of a cow again. No, this is the excited kind. the something shiny and possibly French kind. Turns out, the crew's raided a merchant vessel in the night. A small one, low on weapons but oddly well stocked with grooming goods. Combs, brushes, oils with names none of you can pronounce, and a small chest containing what might be the most beautiful ivory-handled grooming set you've ever seen. It's dainty, intricate, unreasonably elegant for a pirate ship that smells like fermented rope and regret. The crew gathers around like it's a treasure chest full of gold. One by one, they reach in, pull out absurdly well-made items, combs carved with floral patterns, tiny scissors sharp enough to fillet a sardine midair, glass bottles that tinkle musically when jostled. You run your fingers along a brush so fine it must have been used on royalty. Or poodles. For a long moment, the entire crew is spellbound. Then Big Reggie says what everyone is thinking, right, so who's gonna try it first? Pirates aren't known for subtlety, but they are very good at turning anything into a contest. Within minutes, someone's declared a fancy grooming tournament. The idea? Everyone uses the new tools to craft the most luxurious, most aristocratic beard they can. Loser swabs the deck. Winner gets the captain's leftover brandy. And the right to walk around for a full day insisting to be called Monsieur. You volunteer as a judge. Less work. More fun. One by one, your shipmates transform. The man you knew as Scab-Eye Jim suddenly sports a side-parted beard with wax peaks. Jenkins styles his goatee into the shape of a fleur-de-lis. No one knows who combs their beard so straight and shiny it reflects sunlight like a mirror shard. Historians still argue whether pirates genuinely adopted foreign grooming styles or if they just hoarded combs like trophies. But evidence suggests they did both. Pirates loved loot, but they also loved flair. And if a French frigate came stocked with fine oils and high-end trimmers, well, someone was going to try it. You remember a story from a port in Martinique. A pirate was spotted strutting through the market with a perfectly curled mustache, scented like citrus and wine, insisting he'd converted to elegance. It lasted 3 days before he spilled fish stew on his lap and reverted to braiding bones into his beard. Still, these little touches linger. The fine combs become prized items, traded like cards or favors. Some pirates attach them to their belts, or tuck them into their boots like hidden daggers. Grooming becomes a status symbol. Not just having a beard, but maintaining it like a nobleman who occasionally sets things on fire. You watch Cookie attempting to braid his beard with twine soaked in rosewater. It doesn't go well. But the ambition is there. And you're not above trying the fancy brush. Just once. You retreat behind a crate, run it carefully through your beard. It glides like magic. Each stroke feels like an apology from the universe for every time you got lice or used clamshells to trim your jawline. You emerge 20 minutes later feeling like a new man. One of the sailors whistles. "Look at you," he says. "Practically a duke." You nod solemnly. Duke of Itchy Face. It sticks. The rest of the day passes in a haze of pomp and slightly absurd dignity. Pirates bow mockingly, call one another sire, and pretend to sip tea out of chipped mugs. Someone begins composing a sea ballad about Baron Beardsworth, groomer of the Gulf. It's awful. It's brilliant. But under the silliness, something else bubbles up: identity. These tools, stolen or not, offer more than shine. They offer choice. A way to shape yourself even on a ship where everything else is chaos. Whether you wear your beard like a storm cloud or like a royal curtain tassel, it's your call. You are, for a fleeting moment, your own stylist. Your own brand. That night, the ship creaks under a purple sky. The fancy tools are carefully packed back into their chest, now stored in the captain's quarters like holy relics. You sit with your back to the mast, running one last finger through your freshly combed beard. It still smells faintly of bergamot. You have no idea what that is. Nearby, someone whispers, "We should do this weekly." Someone else groans. You grin in the dark. Because even out here, in the middle of nowhere, between storms and madness, pirates still find time to indulge in a little luxury. Even if it comes with the risk of looking like you robbed a French opera house. The wind has picked up, and with it, the sea's rhythm has changed: more sway, more roll, more everything. You're seated just inside the forecastle, out of the spray, combing slowly through your beard while half listening to a tale being spun by soft-eyed Charlie. And then he looked at the other ship, tugged his beard twice, just like this, Charlie demonstrates with two theatrical yanks, and they knew. They knew he meant business. You nod. Not because you believe the story, but because, well, the tug thing? That tracks. Pirates had ways of speaking without words. And a beard wasn't just for warmth or vanity. It was a signal. On this ship and others like it, facial hair has become part of a silent language. A raised brow and a stroked chin means, "Watch that ship off port." A beard twirl? I have a terrible idea, and I'd like your help. A beard braid undone? A warning sign. A beard braided too tight? Someone's nervous. Maybe about to jump ship. Maybe about to propose a mutiny. You've seen beards used to code messages, too. In the more superstitious crews, a streak of blue-dyed hair meant cursed cargo on board. Red thread woven through the beard could signal, "We strike tonight." A clean shave? Sometimes that was a message all its own. Everything has changed. Historians still puzzle over how much of this was organized, and how much just emerged naturally. There's no definitive pirate beard cipher, but there are logs and letters that hint at symbols, gestures, and the ways pirates used beards like uniforms without ever wearing one. Even among allies, ships recognized one another by more than flags. A captain with a distinct beard, a lightning-shaped goatee, a triple twist braid, could be identified across a narrow channel. "That's old Cooper," someone might mutter. "The one who trims his whiskers like a spiral shell." And of course, facial hair played its part in disguise. You recall the tale of Lantern Lou, who once shaved completely and posed as a visiting priest to slip into a Spanish port. It worked, until he couldn't resist scratching his newly bald chin. That reflex gave him away. Beards could also protect identity, not just hide it. On land, pirates often faced arrest or worse. But a shift in grooming, a beard dyed with walnut ink, a mustache twisted instead of combed flat, could throw off bounty hunters just long enough to vanish. In many ways, your beard becomes your passport. And like a real one, it needs constant attention. Upkeep. Presentation. You glance down at the end of your braid. Tied into it is a bead, small, plain, but meaningful. You took it from a ship off Trinidad. Not loot, just a token. A memory. A marker. Anyone who knows what to look for will know where you've been. You're not the only one. Look around the deck, and you'll see all kinds of signals. That scraggly mess on Finn's jaw? He keeps it messy to blend in with dock workers when in port. Jenkins braids his with 2 knots, one for each brother lost in a boarding gone wrong. Charlie, with his gentle tugging, weaves little bits of thread in yellow, green, blue, each one for a different port girl who swore she'd wait for him. Probably all lying, but the thread is real. It's all part of life at sea: survival, connection, expression. You don't get portraits or signatures or fancy journals. You get the beard. And if you're lucky, people remember it. There's a pirate folk saying passed around in whispers: your beard sails into a room before you do. And it's true. First impressions aren't made with clean boots or polished buttons. They're made with whatever is dangling, knotted, scented, or slightly smoking beneath your chin. Some pirates take it further. Ever heard of a beard duel? 2 men, each given 10 minutes, the same set of tools, and a witness. The challenge? Style the most expressive, most fearsome, most ridiculous beard imaginable. It's not official law, of course. Just something passed around crews like a particularly contagious card trick. You've only seen one. It ended in a draw. And both men wore beard bells for a week. As the wind whistles through the rigging and your beard dances in sync with the ropes, you realize something. You're not just growing this beard. You're telling a story. Each trim, each snip, each knot, it's all part of a slow, sea-washed autobiography. Your fingers brush across the right side of your chin. That spot's thinner, where you once singed it lighting a lantern during a storm. A scar runs beneath the jawline from a misfired blade during a raid. You never speak of it, but the shape of your beard shows it. Like a map. And so you tend to it. Not with vanity, but with reverence. You pull out your tiny comb half-snapped, silver-backed, looted off some unfortunate dandy, and gently smooth the ends. A tuck here. A twist there. One final stroke. Somewhere, a bell rings, someone's cooking, or maybe trouble's brewing. But your beard? Your beard is ready. The sea has quieted. It's that hushed moment just before dawn, when the sky's still ink dark but the stars begin to blur at the edges. The ship rocks gently, almost tenderly, and the crew lies scattered across the deck like forgotten marionettes, snoring into hammocks, barrels, and the occasional overturned laundry sack. You sit cross-legged near the mainmast, a tiny lantern by your side, its glow flickering against the folds of your coat. One last chore before rest, the final beard trim. It's something of a ritual now. Every few weeks, when the moon's just right, the grog's just settled, and the mood has gone soft, you take the time to really focus. Not just clean up the frayed ends, or tug out a rogue seaweed sprig, but to shape, smooth up, honor. You don't use the old clamshell anymore. Too chipped. You keep it out of sentiment, tucked in your satchel like a relic. Instead, you've got a slightly bent blade, stolen from a merchant's silverware drawer and lovingly honed on the underside of a cannon. You check the flask mirror one last time. The face staring back is tired, lined with sun, but strong. And the beard? A story told in curls and kinks. Braided strands here, blunt snips there. No symmetry. No elegance. But full of memory. You begin, slow and steady. There's no rush. The crew won't stir for another hour, and even the sea seems to be waiting. Each snip is careful, deliberate. You remember where each part of this beard has been braided before battle, soaked in salt and citrus, nearly set ablaze twice, only once on purpose. You trace the shape like a familiar coastline. You've known it longer than you've known many of the men on this ship. It's hard not to feel a little poetic. Because here, with no crown or crest or name engraved on fine steel, your identity isn't written in ink, it's woven into the hair under your chin. That's the pirate's truth. A floating life. A name that shifts in every port. But the beard? That's yours. Constant. Loyal. Even now. Especially now. You think of the ones who didn't make it, men who felt a storm or soared, or that particularly suspect stew last spring. They're remembered in tales, and in the trims of their beards that some crewmates still keep, tied with red thread, tucked into jacket linings or lockets. You pause. And you do what you always do at the end of your grooming. You trim just a little more off the right side than the left. It's a nod to your first botched attempt years ago, when you sliced too deep and wore a lopsided jawline for weeks. Now, it's become tradition. A private joke between you and the ocean. You run your fingers through the finished shape. It's not perfect. It never is. But it's real. Yours. The sun begins its slow climb, kissing the sails in gold. The crew stirs. Ropes creak. Someone sneezes dramatically. You stand. Beard freshly shaped. Chin cool in the morning air. Pride quiet and steady beneath your skin. You're ready. Because whether you meet storm or sun, peace or peril, treasure or tedium, your beard is with you. A banner. A companion. A history written not in words, but in whiskers. Word count, 1065, wind down, final 300 words, and now, as the sky lightens and the world softens, you close your eyes and breathe. The ship drifts, barely moving, as if it too has paused to admire the stillness. Your beard, now calm and settled, brushes gently against your collar as the breeze stirs through the rigging. You lean back, letting your shoulders rest, your hands go still, your mind begin to drift. In the end, it was never really about the beard. Not just about trimming, oiling, or warding off flaming soup mishaps. It was about care. In a world where so much is chaos, where the sea swells and crashes without warning, where ships vanish and names change, this one small act remains. A trim. A tuck. A ritual. A moment of peace. You carry stories in your beard. Pieces of every storm, every laugh, every port, every whispered memory. It's more than hair. It's a map of where you've been, and the kind of person you've chosen to be. So as you lie back, listening to the slow creak of the timbers, the faint snore of Jenkins' two hammocks over, and the low hush of waves kissing the hull, Let your breath slow. Let the sea cradle you. Let your beard rest too. You've earned it.